I stood in that gas station parking lot at 3 in the morning, watching my son Derek's black SUV disappear into the Nevada desert darkness. The cold wind cut through my sweater as I clutched my purse. Finally understanding they had planned this, they told me to get some air while they used the restroom, then simply drove away. The flickering neon sign cast eerie shadows across the empty highway. My phone showed no signal. I thought about the house I had put the down payment on for them, the thousands of dollars I had given them, the grandchildren I had raised while they traveled for their careers. They thought I was powerless, just some helpless old woman they could discard. They had no idea what was coming. 6 months earlier, I was living peacefully in my suburban Phoenix home, still adjusting to life without my husband Frank after 42 wonderful years of marriage. The house felt too quiet most days, filled with memories and the lingering scent of Frank's aftershave on his clothes that I could not bring myself to pack away. Derek showed up on a Tuesday evening in March, his face etched with worry lines I had never seen before. At 35, my son had always been the picture of confidence, but that night he looked defeated. He sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where I had helped him with homework decades ago, and told me about their financial troubles. Brittany had lost her job at the marketing firm, he explained, and they were facing foreclosure on their house in Tempe. The bank had already started proceedings, and they had nowhere else to turn. Emma and Tyler, my 8 and 10-year-old grandchildren, were asking questions about why Mommy cried so much, and why Daddy stayed up all night on the phone with angry-sounding people. I offered them my guest room immediately. How could I not? These were my grandchildren we were talking about, my flesh and blood. Frank would have done the same thing without hesitation. Within a week, they had moved into my 3-bedroom house with enough belongings to fill a warehouse. Brittany commandeered my sewing room for her extensive wardrobe, while Derek set up a home office in Frank's former study. The children took over the living room with their video games and toys scattered across every surface. I started covering their expenses without thinking twice about it. Groceries for 5 people instead of 1 meant my weekly shopping bill tripled, but I wanted the children to have everything they needed. Emma had been taking dance classes since she was 4, and I was not about to let her dreams die because of temporary financial hardship. Tyler needed new cleats for soccer season. These were necessities, not luxuries. Derek promised repeatedly that their situation was temporary, just until Brittany found another position in marketing, he said. She had interviews lined up, leads to follow up on, networking events to attend. He showed me her updated resume on his laptop, pointing out her impressive credentials and years of experience. But weeks turned into months, and Brittany made no visible effort to find employment. Instead, she spent her days browsing social media, getting manicures at expensive salons, and meeting friends for lunch at trendy restaurants. When I gently suggested she might want to expand her job search to include other industries, she snapped that I did not understand how professional networking worked in her field. Meanwhile, I found myself becoming a full-time caregiver for Emma and Tyler. I picked them up from school every afternoon, helped with their homework at the kitchen table, prepared their dinners, and tucked them into bed with stories. Brittany was always too busy or too tired or too stressed to handle these responsibilities herself. I started dipping into Frank's life insurance money to cover their needs. The $50,000 policy had been meant to provide security for my retirement years, but watching my grandchildren go without felt impossible. I paid for Emma's dance recital costume, Tyler's field trip to the science museum, new school clothes when they outgrew their old ones. Derek expressed gratitude constantly, hugging me tight and calling me the best mother in the world. Brittany would smile sweetly and promise they would pay me back every penny once she landed her next big opportunity. The children showered me with handmade cards and drawings that said "Best Grandma Ever" in crayon letters. I felt needed again, useful, like I had a purpose beyond just existing in Frank's shadow and mourning his absence. But something felt wrong about their financial situation. Derek claimed they were broke, yet I noticed he continued driving his expensive pickup truck instead of trading it for something more economical. Brittany carried designer handbags and wore clothes with tags from expensive boutiques. They ordered takeout from costly restaurants several times a week, instead of eating the meals I prepared. One afternoon in May, while organizing my desk to pay monthly bills, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. My bank statement showed charges on my debit card that I had never made, expensive dinners at steakhouses across town, charges at high-end clothing stores in Scottsdale, a hotel stay in Las Vegas over a weekend when they claimed to be visiting Brittany's sick aunt in Flagstaff. When I confronted Derek about the unauthorized charges, his response shocked me more than the theft itself. He did not apologize or explain or show any remorse. Instead, he turned the situation around on me, claiming I had given him permission to use my card and must be getting confused due to grief and stress. "Mom, you told me I could use your card for emergencies," he said with such conviction that I almost believed him myself. "Remember? You said you wanted to help however you could. Maybe you're forgetting because you've been so overwhelmed since Dad died." He spoke to me like I was a confused child, his voice gentle but condescending. Brittany nodded along, adding that grief could cause memory problems and that I should probably talk to my doctor about these concerning symptoms. But I knew I had never given permission for those charges. I remembered every conversation we had about money, every dollar I had willingly given them. I was not losing my mind or forgetting things. They were stealing from me and then gaslighting me into believing I was imagining it. The questioning of my mental state escalated quickly after that confrontation. Derek began insisting on driving me to all my doctor appointments, claiming he was concerned about my forgetfulness and wanted to make sure I did not miss anything important the doctor might say. During my routine physical with Dr. Martinez, whom I had seen for over 15 years, Derek asked to speak with him privately. Through the thin walls of the examination room, I could hear him expressing worry about my memory, my confusion about financial matters, my tendency to repeat myself or lose track of conversations. Dr. Martinez seemed skeptical, asking Derek specific questions about incidents he had observed. My son had ready answers for everything, describing situations that had never happened, conversations I had never had, problems I had never experienced. After the appointment, Dr. Martinez suggested I might benefit from some cognitive testing, just to establish a baseline for future reference. The suggestion felt like a betrayal, coming from a doctor who had known me for years and had never expressed any concerns about my mental acuity. My neighborhood relationships began changing in ways that confused and hurt me deeply. Mrs. Henderson, who had borrowed sugar and shared gossip over the back fence for 8 years, suddenly seemed uncomfortable during our conversations. She would cut our chats short and hurry back to her house when Derek appeared in the yard. When I walked my golden retriever Buddy around the block each evening, neighbors who used to stop and chat would wave politely from a distance instead of approaching. The friendly exchanges about weather and local news dried up completely. My sister Carol, who had called me 3 times a week since Frank's death, started calling less frequently. When we did talk, she seemed distracted and worried, asking strange questions about how I was managing my finances and whether I felt safe living alone in such a big house. Phone calls from my longtime friends became sporadic, then stopped altogether. When I tried calling them, they seemed rushed and uncomfortable, making excuses to end conversations quickly. I began to feel isolated from the social network that had sustained me through Frank's illness and death. Derek started monitoring my mail delivery, claiming he wanted to help organize my finances and make sure I did not miss any important bills or appointments. He would collect the mail before I could get to it, sorting through everything and bringing me only what he deemed necessary for me to see. My car keys went missing from their usual spot on the kitchen counter. When I asked Derek about them, he suggested I had probably misplaced them somewhere and helped me search the house. We never found them, and he offered to drive me wherever I needed to go until they turned up. Brittany made increasingly snide comments about old people who did not realize they needed help managing their lives. She would roll her eyes when I forgot small details or repeat things Derek had already told me, sighing dramatically about the burden of dealing with elderly family members who were losing their independence. I felt like I was living in some kind of alternative reality where everyone else could see problems with my mental state that I could not recognize in myself. The confidence I had always felt in my own mind and memories began to waver under constant questioning and doubt. One evening in June, while Derek thought I was taking a bath, I overheard him on the phone with Carol. The conversation shattered any remaining doubts about what was happening to me. "She's definitely showing signs of dementia," Derek was saying, his voice full of fake concern. She accused Brittany and me of stealing from her when she gave us permission to use her cards. She's living in the past, remembering conversations that never happened, forgetting things she said just hours ago. Carol's voice was faint through the phone, but I could hear her expressing worry about me living alone in such a big house with so many stairs and potential hazards. I think she needs more supervision, Derek continued. Maybe it's time to consider assisted living or having someone move in to help her. She's not safe managing her own finances anymore. Yesterday, she tried to pay the same bill 3 times because she forgot she had already written the check. That conversation never happened. I had never tried to pay any bill multiple times. I had never given them permission to use my cards. I was not showing signs of dementia or living in the past or forgetting recent conversations. Derek was systematically destroying my relationships and reputation by spreading lies about my mental state. Every person I trusted was hearing these fabricated stories about my declining cognitive abilities. No wonder my friends and neighbors were acting strangely around me. I realized with growing horror that this was not just theft or financial abuse. This was something much more calculated and cruel. Derek was isolating me from my support system, making everyone believe I was incompetent, setting the stage for something even worse than what had already happened. The question was not whether I could trust my own mind anymore. The question was what Derek was planning to do next, and how far he was willing to go to get what he wanted from me. 2 months before that abandoned gas station, Derek announced they had found the perfect house for their family. He was bubbling with excitement as he showed me the listing on his laptop, pointing out the beautiful 4-bedroom home in an upscale Scottsdale neighborhood. The house was stunning, I had to admit. White stucco exterior with a red tile roof, surrounded by professionally landscaped desert plants and palm trees. The interior photos showed gleaming hardwood floors, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and a sparkling swimming pool in the backyard that would be perfect for the children. Derek explained that they had been pre-approved for a mortgage and found a lender willing to work with their current financial situation. However, they needed help with the 20% down payment, which came to $80,000. Without that substantial down payment, they could not qualify for the favorable interest rate that would make their monthly payments affordable. I hesitated when he first mentioned the amount. $80,000 represented the majority of Frank's life insurance money that remained after months of supporting their family. That money was supposed to be my safety net for retirement, my protection against unexpected medical bills or long-term care needs. Derek must have sensed my reluctance because he immediately launched into an emotional appeal about the children needing stability and a permanent home. Emma was struggling academically because of all the uncertainty in their lives, he claimed. Tyler had been asking why they could not have their own house like his friends at school. Mom, this is our chance to give Emma and Tyler the childhood they deserve, Derek said, his voice thick with emotion. They've been through so much already with the foreclosure and having to move in here. They need to know they're safe, that they won't have to move again. Brittany appeared with what she claimed was a job offer letter from a marketing firm in Scottsdale. The position came with a substantial salary increase that would allow them to pay me back within 2 years, she promised. She had already calculated how much they could afford to repay each month once she started working. The real estate agent Derek introduced me to was a polished woman named Sandra, who immediately made me feel like part of the family's home-buying team. She suggested adding me as a co-signer on the mortgage application, explaining that my excellent credit score and stable income from Social Security and Frank's pension would help them qualify for better interest rates. Mrs. Thompson, your financial stability could save your son's family thousands of dollars over the life of this loan, Sandra explained as she spread paperwork across her mahogany desk. You're not just helping them buy a house, you're helping them build equity and create generational wealth for your grandchildren. The paperwork seemed straightforward enough. My signature on a few documents, providing my financial information for the credit check, authorizing the down payment transfer from my savings account. Sandra assured me that as a co-signer, I would have legal protections and ownership rights that would safeguard my investment. Derek pressured me constantly during the week leading up to closing, calling several times each day with updates about potential problems that might derail the purchase. The interest rates were fluctuating, he said. Another buyer was expressing interest in the same property. The seller was getting impatient with delays and might accept a different offer. Mom, if we lose this house because we can't come up with the down payment on time, I don't know what we'll do, Derek said during one particularly emotional phone call. The kids have already picked out their bedrooms. Emma has been telling her friends at school about the swimming pool. I can't break their hearts by telling them it fell through. On the day of closing, I sat in the title company office, surrounded by stacks of papers and official-looking documents. Derek sat beside me, his hand on my shoulder, whispering encouragements about how proud Dad would be to know I was helping secure the grandchildren's future. I signed document after document, trusting that the real estate professionals knew what they were doing and that Derek had my best interests at heart. The down payment transfer cleaned out most of my remaining savings, but seeing Derek's face light up when he received the keys made it feel worthwhile. The family moved into their beautiful new house within a week, and I helped them unpack boxes and arrange furniture in their spacious rooms. Emma and Tyler were thrilled with their new bedrooms and spent hours splashing in the swimming pool while I watched from the patio, feeling proud of what I had made possible for them. Derek and Brittany promised I could visit any time, that I would always have a place at their dinner table, that the grandchildren would spend weekends at my house just like before. This house would be the foundation for rebuilding our family relationships, they assured me. For 3 blissful weeks, everything seemed perfect. I visited twice for family dinners, helped Emma with a school project about family history, taught Tyler how to do a proper cannonball in the pool. Brittany seemed genuinely grateful, hugging me tight and thanking me repeatedly for making their dream home possible. Then came the day that changed everything. I arrived at their house on a Thursday evening for our planned weekly family dinner, carrying a homemade apple pie that had been Tyler's favorite since he was little. The driveway was empty, and no lights were on inside the house despite the early evening darkness. I knocked on the front door for several minutes before using the spare key they had given me for emergencies. The house was completely empty. Not just empty of people, empty of everything. No furniture, no personal belongings, no sign that anyone had ever lived there. A neighbor working in his front yard noticed my confusion and came over to explain. Moving trucks had been there that morning, he said, loading up boxes and furniture while the family supervised. They had mentioned something about relocating for a new job opportunity. I stood in that empty house, my footsteps echoing in rooms that had been full of life just days before, trying to process what had happened. Derek had not mentioned any job opportunity or plans to move. We had talked about Emma's upcoming dance recital and Tyler's summer soccer league, both of which assumed they would still be living in Scottsdale. My phone buzzed with a text message from Derek that made everything crystal clear. We've gone away for extended vacation and need space to work on our family relationships. Please don't contact us for a while. That was when I understood the house purchase had never been about creating a stable home for the grandchildren or rebuilding our family bonds. It had been an elaborate scheme to get their hands on my money, with no intention of staying in Scottsdale or maintaining any relationship with me. I had funded their escape plan with my husband's life insurance money, and now they were gone without a trace, leaving me alone in an empty house that I had paid for but would never see again. The evening they picked me up for what Derek called a family road trip to rebuild relationships started with such promise that I almost forgot about the house betrayal and the months of manipulation. When Derek called to say they were driving through Phoenix on their way to California for Brittany's new job, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe we could repair our damaged bond. Mom, I know things have been difficult between us lately, Derek said over the phone, his voice carrying what sounded like genuine remorse. Brittany and I have been talking, and we realize we made some mistakes. We want to make things right with you. They arrived at my house just after sunset, with Emma and Tyler bouncing excitedly in the back seat of their SUV. The children seemed genuinely happy to see me, rushing to give me hugs and chattering about their adventures in California. Emma had started taking surfing lessons, she told me proudly. Tyler had made friends with a boy who had a skateboard ramp in his backyard. Derek suggested I join them for the drive back to their new home in San Diego, describing it as a chance for us to spend quality time together and work through our misunderstandings. The children begged me to come, promising to show me the beach house they were renting and teach me how to build sandcastles. I packed a small overnight bag and climbed into the passenger seat, feeling optimistic about the possibility of salvaging our relationship. Maybe Derek really had realized the damage his lies and theft had caused. Maybe Brittany had finally matured enough to understand the pain they had inflicted on someone who had only wanted to help them. But the atmosphere in the SUV felt strained from the moment we left Phoenix. Brittany sat in the back with the children, her responses to my attempts at conversation cold and minimal. When I asked about their new life in California, she gave vague, one-word answers that discouraged further questions. The children seemed different too, more subdued than their initial excitement had suggested. When I tried to engage them in conversation about school or their new friends, they exchanged glances with their mother before answering, as if they had been coached about what to say and what to avoid discussing. Derek drove in silence for most of the trip, his jaw clenched and his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. When I commented on the beautiful desert scenery or tried to point out landmarks to the children, he responded with grunts or brief nods that effectively shut down any attempt at family bonding. By the time we reached the Nevada border, I was beginning to regret accepting their invitation. The tension in the vehicle was suffocating, and I felt like an unwelcome stranger rather than a beloved grandmother and mother. Derek pulled into a remote gas station just off Interstate 15, claiming I looked carsick and needed some fresh air. The parking lot was nearly empty, except for a couple of long-haul truckers grabbing coffee and snacks for their overnight drives. "Why don't you stretch your legs and get some air while we use the restrooms and grab some drinks for the road?" Derek suggested, his tone casual but his eyes avoiding mine. "Well, be right back." I stepped out of the SUV, grateful for the chance to escape the oppressive atmosphere inside the vehicle. The cool, desert air felt refreshing after hours of breathing recycled air conditioning. I walked around the parking lot for a few minutes, stretching my stiff muscles and watching the stars appear in the clear Nevada sky. When I turned back toward the gas station, Derek's SUV was gone. At first, I assumed they had moved to a different pump or driven around to the back of the building. I walked around the entire perimeter of the station, checking every corner and shadowed area where they might have parked. The realization hit me gradually, like cold water slowly filling a bathtub. They were not coming back. They had driven away deliberately, leaving me stranded in the middle of nowhere with nothing but my purse and the clothes on my back. On the windshield of an abandoned pickup truck, I found a handwritten note stuck under the wiper blade. "Maybe this will teach you not to interfere in our lives anymore. Find your own way home." I stood in that empty parking lot for nearly an hour, waiting for them to return, telling myself this had to be some kind of misunderstanding or cruel joke that would be resolved when they came back, apologizing and laughing about the confusion. A state trooper found me sitting on the concrete curb outside the station at 2 a.m, still clutching that note and staring down the highway in the direction they had disappeared. Officer Rodriguez was kind and professional, helping me contact a rental car company and driving me to a nearby motel where I could spend the rest of the night. The desk clerk at the Starlight Inn, a grandmother herself, helped me charge my phone and book a room with her employee discount. As I sat on the thin motel bedspread, finally safe but emotionally shattered, I opened my banking app to check my account balance and discovered something that transformed my shock into pure rage. Derek had been systematically draining my remaining accounts using banking information he had gathered during his months of helping with my finances. My checking account showed daily transfers to accounts I did not recognize, steadily emptying my Social Security and pension payments over the past several months. He had not just stolen the house down payment or used my debit card for occasional purchases. He had been stealing every dollar I received, leaving me with barely enough to cover my basic living expenses while I unknowingly funded their new life in California. The abandonment was not just cruel revenge for questioning their behavior. It was the final step in a calculated plan to steal everything I had while discrediting my mental state, to prevent me from seeking help or justice. As I sat in that lonely motel room, surrounded by the smell of industrial cleaning supplies and the sound of 18-wheelers rumbling past on the highway, I made a decision that would change everything. I was not going to be a victim anymore. Derek and Brittany thought they had won, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated their 71-year-old target, and they were about to learn exactly how dangerous that mistake would prove to be. The rental car drive back to Phoenix gave me 8 hours to think clearly about my situation for the first time in months. As the sun rose over the Arizona desert, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple that Frank had always loved, I began to see the full scope of what had been done to me. My first stop was the law office of William Patterson, who had handled Frank's will and been our family attorney for over 20 years. William was one of Frank's closest friends, a fellow veteran who understood the value of loyalty and justice. When his secretary saw my face that Tuesday morning, she immediately cleared his calendar and ushered me into his office. I told William everything, starting with Derek's initial request for help and ending with the gas station abandonment. He listened without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad, and occasionally shaking his head in disbelief at the audacity of the scheme. Ashlee, what they've done to you constitutes elder financial abuse under Arizona law, William said, his voice tight with anger. The systematic isolation, the gaslighting about your mental state, the unauthorized access to your accounts. This is a textbook case of family exploitation. William immediately initiated a bank investigation into the unauthorized transfers, providing documentation that proved I had never authorized Derek to access my accounts. The bank's fraud department discovered that Derek had used personal information gathered from my tax documents and mail to set up automatic transfers that had been draining my accounts for 4 months. But the real breakthrough came when William reviewed the paperwork from the house purchase. As he spread the documents across his conference table, his expression shifted from concern to something approaching satisfaction. Derek made a crucial error in the paperwork, William explained, pointing to specific clauses in the purchase agreement. Since you provided the entire down payment and co-signed the mortgage, you have substantial legal ownership rights to this property. Derek never completed the paperwork necessary to remove you from the deed. According to property records, Derek had defaulted on the very first mortgage payment, triggering an automatic foreclosure process. Since my name was on both the deed and the mortgage as a co-signer, I had the legal right to take possession of the property and sell it to recover my stolen funds. The beauty of this situation is that Derek's attempt to steal from you actually gave you leverage over him, William continued, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He thought he was clever, but he just handed you the keys to your own justice. William hired a private investigator named Marcus Chen, a former police detective who specialized in financial fraud cases. Within 48 hours, Marcus had located Derek and Brittany living in an expensive beachfront rental in La Jolla, California, funded entirely by money stolen from my accounts. The investigation revealed that Derek and Brittany were living far beyond any reasonable means, eating at high-end restaurants, shopping at luxury boutiques, and enrolling the children in private schools that cost more per month than most people's rent. They were burning through my money at an alarming rate while planning to declare bankruptcy to avoid paying back any debts. But Marcus uncovered something even more disturbing during his investigation. Derek had been telling California courts that I had dementia and had signed over all my assets willingly as gifts to help my family. He had filed paperwork claiming he was my financial guardian due to my incompetence, which would make his theft legal and prevent me from reclaiming anything. If this guardian paperwork gets approved, Derek will have legal control over all your remaining assets, William warned. We need to move fast to establish your competence and take action while we still have legal standing to do so. William scheduled an immediate competency evaluation with a court-approved psychologist, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, who specialized in elder abuse cases. Dr. Mitchell's comprehensive testing confirmed what I already knew. My mental faculties were completely intact, my memory was excellent, and there were no signs of cognitive decline or incompetence. Mrs. Thompson shows no evidence of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or any other condition that would impair her decision-making abilities. Dr. Mitchell wrote in her official report. She demonstrates clear recall of events, sound reasoning skills, and appropriate emotional responses to the financial abuse she has experienced. Armed with this documentation, William filed emergency motions in both Arizona and California courts to freeze Derek's accounts and prevent him from accessing any additional funds. We also filed for immediate possession of the Scottsdale house, using my co-signer status and Derek's mortgage default as legal justification. The Arizona court granted our emergency motions within a week, giving me full legal control over the Scottsdale property and authorizing me to sell it immediately to recover my stolen funds. Derek's attempts to claim guardianship over my finances were dismissed when the California court reviewed Dr. Mitchell's competency evaluation. William also discovered that Derek had been writing bad checks and stealing from other family members, including his elderly uncle and Brittany's grandmother. Outstanding warrants had been issued for his arrest on multiple fraud charges that went far beyond what he had done to me. Derek has been running quite an operation, William explained as we reviewed the investigation results. You're not his only victim, Ashlee. He's been systematically targeting elderly family members for months, using the same manipulation tactics and isolation strategies on all of them. As we prepared to take possession of the house and begin the sale process, I felt something I had not experienced since Frank's death. A sense of power and control over my own life. For months, Derek and Brittany had made me feel confused, helpless, and dependent on their version of reality. Now I held the legal documents that proved my competence, the bank records that proved their theft, and the property deed that gave me the power to recover what they had stolen. They thought they had planned the perfect crime, but they had handed me every tool I needed to destroy them. The house that was supposed to be their grand prize was about to become their downfall, and I was going to make sure they understood exactly who they had chosen to cross. The Scottsdale real estate market was on fire that summer, and William's connections in the legal community helped expedite the ownership transfer process. Within 2 weeks of filing our emergency motions, I held the legal documents that gave me full control over the house Derek thought he had stolen from me. The 4-bedroom home with the swimming pool that had seemed like such a dream for Emma and Tyler was appraised at $420,000, significantly more than the original purchase price due to the rapidly appreciating neighborhood values. Multiple real estate agents assured me that properties in that area were selling within days of listing, often above asking price. I chose an agent named Patricia Hernandez, recommended by William for her expertise in quick sales and her discretion in handling sensitive legal situations. Patricia understood the urgency of my situation and agreed to list the property immediately at market value with a strategy designed to attract serious cash buyers. The house went on the market on a Thursday morning, and by Saturday evening we had received 3 offers above asking price. A young tech entrepreneur offered $435,000 in cash with a 2-week closing timeline, which I accepted immediately. That was when Derek received his first foreclosure notice from the mortgage company, followed by a certified letter from Patricia's office informing him that the property had been sold, and he needed to remove any remaining personal belongings by the end of the month. Derek's first phone call came at 6 a.m, his voice shaking with panic and rage as he screamed about theft and legal action and protecting his children's interests. He claimed I was stealing from my own grandchildren, destroying their stability out of petty revenge for a simple misunderstanding about money. "Mom, you can't do this," Derek pleaded during one particularly emotional call. "Emma and Tyler are asking why their grandmother is taking their house away. How am I supposed to explain to them that their own family member is trying to destroy their lives?" I listened to his manipulation tactics with a clarity that surprised me. After months of doubting my own perceptions and questioning my memory, I could finally hear his lies for what they were. He was not concerned about the children's well-being. He was panicking about losing his source of stolen income. Brittany left tearful voicemails begging for forgiveness, promising to pay back every penny they had taken, swearing they had learned their lesson about respecting family boundaries. She claimed they had made mistakes in judgment but never intended to hurt me, and that Derek had been under tremendous stress that had affected his decision-making. "Please don't do this to us, Ashlee," Brittany sobbed in one message. "We'll do anything to make this right. Just give us a chance to show you how sorry we are. The kids need stability, and this will traumatize them forever." But their promises rang hollow after months of lies and manipulation. They had not shown any remorse when they abandoned me in that gas station parking lot or when they drained my bank accounts while I struggled to pay my own bills. Their apologies only came when they realized I had the power to take back what they had stolen. The children did call, their small voices breaking my heart as they asked why Grandma was angry with them and whether they had done something wrong. Emma cried as she told me about packing up her room again and having to leave her friends behind. Tyler wanted to know if I would still come to his soccer games if they moved back to Arizona. Having those conversations was the most difficult part of the entire ordeal. I loved Emma and Tyler more than my own life, and hearing their confusion and pain made me question whether I was doing the right thing. But I also knew that protecting them meant stopping their parents' pattern of theft and manipulation before it escalated even further. I explained to the children, in age-appropriate terms, that their parents had taken money that belonged to Grandma without permission, and that actions have consequences even when we love the people who make poor choices. I assured them that I would always love them, but that I could not allow anyone to treat me badly, even family members. The house sale closed on a Tuesday afternoon in early August, with the tech entrepreneur wiring $435,000 directly into my account. After paying off the remaining mortgage balance and real estate fees, I netted over $300,000. Far more than Derek had stolen from me, but compensation for months of emotional abuse and manipulation. Derek arrived at the empty house that evening to find a young family moving furniture into what he still considered his home. The new owners, a couple with twin toddlers, had no idea about the drama surrounding the property's history. I was waiting in my car across the street with Sheriff's Deputy Martinez, who had agreed to serve Derek with papers for elder abuse, financial fraud, and abandonment charges. We watched Derek stand in the driveway for nearly 10 minutes, staring at the moving truck and the happy family claiming possession of what he thought belonged to him. When Deputy Martinez approached with the legal papers, Derek's face shifted through a range of emotions: confusion, recognition, fear, and finally rage. The deputy explained that outstanding warrants had been issued for Derek's arrest on multiple fraud charges involving several elderly victims across 2 states. As the handcuffs clicked around Derek's wrists, I rolled down my window and spoke to him for what I knew would be the last time. "You thought you could steal from me because I was old and grief-stricken and alone," I said, my voice steady and clear. "You underestimated me, Derek. I may be 71 years old, but I'm far from powerless. Consider this your education and consequences." Derek stared at me with something I had never seen in his eyes before: respect mixed with fear. For the first time in our relationship, he understood that his mother was not someone to be manipulated or underestimated. As Deputy Martinez drove away with Derek in the back seat, I sat in my car watching the new family arrange toys in the front yard where Emma and Tyler should have been playing. The house sale was complete, the money was recovered, and justice was being served. But I knew my real work was just beginning. Derek's arrest was only the first step in rebuilding a life he had tried to destroy, and I had plans that would ensure no one ever underestimated Ashlee Thompson again. 6 months after that gas station in Nevada, I stood on the balcony of my new beachfront condominium in San Diego, watching the sunset paint the Pacific Ocean in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The 2-bedroom condo with its panoramic ocean view had cost me less than half of what I recovered from the house sale, leaving me with substantial savings and a sense of financial security I had not felt since Frank's death. The senior living community where I had chosen to make my new home was nothing like the stereotypical nursing home Derek had probably imagined for my future. Harborview Estates was a vibrant community of active adults who organized hiking clubs, book discussions, cooking classes, and volunteer opportunities throughout San Diego County. My new friends Margaret and Susan had invited me to join their morning beach walk group, where we discussed everything from politics to grandchildren while getting exercise and enjoying the ocean breeze. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere, surrounded by people who valued my opinions and respected my independence. Derek served 18 months in prison for elder financial abuse, during which time he received court-mandated counseling about financial crimes and family relationships. His release came with 5 years of probation and restitution requirements that would follow him for decades. Brittany divorced Derek while he was incarcerated, claiming she had been manipulated and controlled by him throughout their marriage. She moved back to live with her parents in Ohio, where she found a job at a local retail store and began the slow process of rebuilding her life as a single mother. The children were the innocent victims in this entire situation, and my heart ached for the trauma and instability they had endured because of their parents' choices. After Derek's release from prison, Emma and Tyler began visiting me in San Diego once a month under court-supervised arrangements that ensured their safety and my peace of mind. Watching Emma splash in the community swimming pool and Tyler build sandcastles on the beach during their visits brought me joy, tinged with sadness for all the time we had lost during their parents' manipulation campaign. But children are remarkably resilient, and slowly we began rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. Derek attempted reconciliation through a long letter delivered by his probation officer, filled with apologies and promises of changed behavior. He claimed that prison had given him time to reflect on his mistakes and understand the pain he had caused not just me, but his own children. I responded with a brief note setting clear boundaries for any future contact. I explained that forgiveness did not mean forgetting, and that trust, once broken so completely, could never be fully restored. Any relationship we might have in the future would be on my terms, with supervised visits and transparent financial arrangements. My volunteer work with the San Diego Elder Rights Coalition had become one of the most rewarding aspects of my new life. Every week, I helped other seniors who had fallen victim to financial abuse by family members, sharing my story and the legal strategies that had helped me recover my stolen assets. The most important thing to remember is that you are not powerless. I told support groups filled with elderly victims of family fraud. These criminals count on us feeling ashamed, confused, and helpless. But we have legal rights, community resources, and inner strength they never expect us to use. Many of the seniors I counseled had been isolated from friends and family through tactics similar to what Derek had used on me. They doubted their own memories, questioned their mental abilities, and blamed themselves for trusting people who claimed to love them. Helping them recognize the manipulation patterns and take legal action to protect themselves gave my own painful experience a sense of purpose and meaning. Every success story, every recovered asset, every abuser held accountable felt like a small victory against the crime that had nearly destroyed my life. Dr. Mitchell, the psychologist who had evaluated my competency during the legal proceedings, invited me to speak at conferences about elder abuse prevention. Standing at podiums in hotel ballrooms, addressing social workers and attorneys and law enforcement officers, I found my voice in ways I had never imagined possible. Financial abuse of the elderly is not just about money. I would tell these professional audiences, it's about power, control, and the systematic destruction of a person's autonomy and dignity. The goal is not just theft, it's total domination of another human being's life. My sister Carol and I had rebuilt our relationship after she learned the truth about Derek's lies and manipulation. She apologized repeatedly for believing his stories about my mental decline, admitting she had been worried about my isolation but had not known how to help. I should have trusted my instincts about you, Carol said during one of her visits to San Diego. You were always the strongest person in our family, and I let Derek convince me you were falling apart. I'm so sorry I failed you when you needed support the most. Emma called me one evening from Ohio, where she was thriving in a stable school environment and had made several close friends. At 10 years old, she was remarkably insightful about her family's situation and asked thoughtful questions about why people sometimes make choices that hurt the people they love. Grandma, do you think Daddy learned his lesson in jail? She asked during our weekly phone conversation. Do you think he'll be a better person now? I chose my words carefully, explaining that people can change if they truly want to, but that actions matter more than promises. I told her that I hoped her father would make better choices in the future, but that my job was to protect myself and love her regardless of what he decided to do. Tyler, now 12 and growing into a thoughtful young man, surprised me during his last visit by apologizing for not speaking up when his parents were treating me badly. He said he knew something was wrong but had been too scared to say anything because his parents told him I was getting sick and might not remember things correctly. I should have called you when they made us move to California, he said, his young voice heavy with regret. I knew you would be worried about us, but Dad said you wouldn't care because you were mad at us. These conversations with my grandchildren reminded me that healing from family betrayal affects multiple generations, and that breaking cycles of manipulation and abuse requires courage from everyone involved. As I sat on my balcony that evening, watching the waves crash against the shore while the last light faded from the California sky, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this place of peace and strength. I had learned that at 71 years old, I was far from powerless. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is showing them that actions have consequences, that love does not mean accepting harmful behavior, and that family relationships must be built on respect and honesty. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is realizing that you deserve better than being taken for granted, that your voice matters, and that it's never too late to fight for your own dignity and worth. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and possibility as I made my evening tea and prepared to video chat with the support group I would be facilitating the next morning. Tomorrow, I would help another group of seniors understand that they were not alone, not powerless, and not responsible for the crimes committed against them by people they trusted. My story had become their story, and their healing had become part of my own. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone you trusted was taking advantage of your kindness? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself when it mattered most? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story moved you or helped you see your own situation more clearly, please like this video and share it with others who might benefit from hearing about the power we all have to protect ourselves and demand better treatment from the people in our lives. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming adversity, finding strength in difficult times, and discovering that it's never too late to fight for the respect and dignity we all deserve. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of a community that believes in the power of speaking truth, seeking justice, and supporting each other through life's most challenging moments. Remember that your voice matters, your experiences have value, and you are stronger than you know. Until next time, may you find the courage to protect your own well-being and the wisdom to know that real love never requires you to accept abuse or betrayal.